My son sold my 2 houses and car without my knowledge, now he's in prison begging for mercy. The first time I saw my son in prison, my knees went weak. He looked at me through the rusty bars, his face pale and tired. "Mama," he said, tears rolling down his cheeks, "please forgive me. I didn't know it would end like this." His words hit me like thunder. My only son, the boy I raised with love and sacrifice, had sold my 2 houses and even my car, without my knowledge. And now, after everything he had done, he was begging for mercy. I couldn't speak. My heart felt too heavy for words. How could I forgive him when I remembered how hard I worked for everything? I built those houses with my late husband, brick by brick. I remembered the nights we stayed up planning, the times we ate little so we could save more. And now, all that was gone, just like that. I closed my eyes, trying to stop the tears, but they flowed anyway. Then I asked quietly, "Why, Michael? Why would you do that to your own mother?" He dropped his head and began to cry louder, saying he needed money, that his friends told him it was just a small loan, that he didn't mean to lose everything. I felt my chest tighten as I listened. I wanted to believe him, but deep down, I knew greed had taken over his heart. Everything had started months before that moment, but I didn't see the signs. I was too busy trusting my son. I remember the first strange thing that happened. One morning, I got a message from my tenant saying they had a new landlord. I laughed, thinking it was a mistake. How could someone else claim to own my house? But later that day, a man came to my gate holding documents, saying he had bought the property. My heart skipped. I called Michael immediately, and he said, "Oh, don't worry, Mama. It's just some mix-up. I'll fix it." He sounded calm, too calm for someone facing such a serious issue. That was the first time I felt something was not right. 2 weeks later, my car went missing from the compound. When I asked Michael, he said he had taken it to the mechanic. But when I didn't see it for another week, I demanded to know the truth. That was when he raised his voice for the first time, telling me to stop nagging him, that he was handling everything. It was like he had become someone else. My kind, quiet son had turned into a stranger before my eyes. I didn't know then that he had already sold the car to pay off some gambling debts. My heart sank when I later found out. But the real shock came one morning when I went to the city council to renew the property tax papers. The officer looked at me with confusion and said, "Madam, but your houses are no longer in your name." I froze. "What do you mean?" I asked. He turned the screen toward me, and there it was, my son's signature, transferring both houses to a buyer. I felt like the ground was moving under my feet. My head spun, my hands shook, and I almost fainted right there. That was the moment my world broke into pieces. I rushed home, praying it was some mistake. But when I got there, Michael was gone. His clothes were missing, and his phone was switched off. I sat on the floor, crying until my eyes hurt. Neighbors gathered around, whispering in shock. My heart screamed silently. How could my own blood betray me like this? For days, I couldn't eat or sleep. I just sat in the sitting room, staring at the empty spot where my car used to be, remembering the laughter we once shared. 3 weeks later, the police called. They said they had caught a young man trying to sell forged papers of another property, and my name came up in the investigation. When they told me it was Michael, I dropped the phone. I couldn't breathe. My son, my only child, was now a criminal. That night, I couldn't stop hearing his voice as a little boy, calling me, "Mama," with his tiny hands around my neck. I broke down and cried till morning. The next day, I went to the police station. As I stood there watching him behind bars, all I could think about was the moment he sold my last house. That was when everything truly ended for both of us. But what he said to me that day in prison, what he confessed, shattered me more than anything he had done before. When Michael finally confessed everything to me that day, my heart broke in a way I had never felt before. He said it started with friends he met at a betting shop. They promised him quick money, told him all he needed was to borrow from me and invest, then return it with profit. He said, "Mama, they told me it's just business. I thought I could replace it before you found out." But he didn't replace it. He lost everything, every penny, every property, even the car. As he spoke, I could see the guilt in his eyes, but I also saw the foolish pride that destroyed him. I told him, Michael, you were my only child. Everything I owned, I planned to give to you one day. Why couldn't you wait? He just kept crying, saying, I was tired of being poor, Mama. I wanted to give you a better life. But his better life left us with nothing. The police officer beside him shook his head slowly. He had heard too many stories like this before. When I got home that evening, I sat in the empty sitting room again. The walls felt cold and the air was heavy. I stared at the small photo of Michael as a child, the one I took when he won his school prize for best student. He looked so innocent then. I kept asking myself, where did I go wrong? Did I love him too much? Did I trust him too easily? I remembered when his father died. Michael was only 15. I promised his father on his deathbed that I would protect him no matter what. That promise echoed in my heart like a curse that night. The next few weeks were filled with endless police visits and court summons. I had to testify about the properties and provide proof of ownership. Each time I stepped into the court, my legs trembled. People whispered around me, saying things like, that's the mother whose son sold everything. Their words cut deep, but I kept my head up. I told myself, you didn't raise him to steal. You raised him to be good. Yet, shame followed me everywhere. Michael's friends had already run away. He was left to face the crime alone. One of the buyers who had purchased my house even came to see me. He said, Madam, I'm sorry, but I bought it legally from your son. I didn't know it wasn't his property. I wanted to scream, but I just nodded weakly. I couldn't blame him. The law was now against both of us. One night, I heard a knock at my door. It was raining heavily, and I almost didn't open. But when I did, I saw a young woman standing there, soaking wet. She said, Ma, my name is Clara. I was Michael's girlfriend. My eyes widened. I had never heard of her before. She looked down, holding a small bag. He told me to give you this, she said, handing me a crumpled envelope. I opened it and found an old photo of us, me, Michael, and his late father, folded neatly beside a note. The note said, Mama, I am sorry. If I ever get out of here, I promise I'll start again. Please don't give up on me. I pressed the paper to my chest and cried silently. I could feel his pain, but I also felt my own deep anger. Love and hate wrestled inside me. I thought about visiting him again, but my pride stopped me. I told myself I'd go after the hearing was over. A week later, the court gave its verdict. Michael was sentenced to 3 years in prison for fraud and illegal property sale. I sat quietly as the judge read the sentence. Michael looked at me one last time before they took him away. Tears streamed down his face, but I couldn't cry anymore. My tears had run dry. That evening, as I walked back home, something unexpected happened. When I reached my gate, I saw a group of men waiting for me. Their faces were hard, their voices low. One of them stepped forward and said, Madam, your son owes us money. If you don't pay, we'll make you pay in another way. My heart stopped. I tried to speak, but my throat was dry. I realized then that Michael's troubles were far from over, and now, they had come for me. The men's words froze my blood. Rain was still drizzling that night, and the sound of it hitting the ground mixed with the pounding of my heart. We just want what he owes, one of them said, stepping closer. His eyes were cold and threatening. I could smell alcohol on his breath. I clutched my wrapper tightly and whispered, Please, he's in prison. I have nothing left. But they didn't care. They said Michael had borrowed money to double his earnings and had used my name to gain their trust. When I told them I had lost everything because of him, one of the men laughed harshly. Then you better find a way to get it back, he said, because next time we come, we won't be talking. They walked away slowly into the dark street, leaving muddy footprints at my doorstep. I stood there shaking for a long time before I found the strength to lock the door. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound outside made me jump. I kept imagining those men breaking in. By morning, I went to the police to report the threat. The officer sighed and said, Madam, there's little we can do unless they harm you. Try to be careful. I felt helpless. I went back home and prayed. I prayed for protection, and I prayed for Michael. I wanted to hate him, but I couldn't. He was still my son, even if he had broken my heart. Days turned into weeks. I started selling small snacks by the roadside just to survive. The shame of losing everything was heavy, but I refused to beg. Some neighbors avoided me, others pitied me. But one kind woman, Mrs. Anderson, often brought me food and kept me company. She said, "Don't let this destroy you. God can still turn this story around." I wanted to believe her, but it was hard. One afternoon, I received a letter from the prison. It was from Michael. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside, he wrote about how life in prison was changing him. He said he had met a pastor who was teaching him to pray, and he was learning carpentry to keep busy. He wrote, "Mama, I know I hurt you deeply, but please believe me when I say I've changed. I think about you every day. I just want one chance to make things right when I get out." Tears filled my eyes. Maybe, just maybe, there was still a small light left in him. I decided to visit him the following week. When I got there, he looked thinner but calmer. He smiled when he saw me and said, "You came." I nodded. For a moment, there was silence between us. Then he said, "Mama, I want to pay back everything I took from you one day. I want to make you proud again." I wanted to believe him so badly. I told him, "Michael, you must first forgive yourself and learn from your mistakes. The world gives second chances to those who change truly." He nodded, his eyes wet. As I left the prison, I felt a strange peace I hadn't felt in months. Maybe that was the beginning of healing. But that peace didn't last long. 2 nights later, I heard noises outside my window again. When I peeped through the curtain, I saw shadows moving near the gate. My heart raced. Suddenly, a loud bang shook the door. "Open up," a voice shouted. "We warned you, old woman." Before I could react, a stone crashed through my window, and glass shattered across the floor. I screamed and ran to hide. Behind the sofa, my hands shook as I clutched my phone to call the police. The men were back, and this time, they weren't here to talk. The sound of breaking glass filled the air. I could hear their heavy footsteps outside, pounding on the metal gate. "We warned you," one of them shouted again. My heart thumped so loud I could hear it in my ears. I grabbed my phone with trembling hands and dialed the police. My voice shook as I said, "Please help me. They're breaking into my house." Before I could finish, I heard another loud crash. They had broken through the small gate. I ran into my bedroom and locked the door. I hid behind the wardrobe, trying not to breathe loudly. I could hear them in the living room, searching and shouting. "Where's the old woman? She must be hiding," one of them said. My entire body was shaking. Minutes felt like hours. I prayed quietly, "God, please protect me. Don't let me die like this." Just as one of them kicked my bedroom door, a siren wailed outside. The men panicked. "It's the police," one shouted. I heard them run out quickly. When the police entered, I burst into tears. 2 officers helped me stand up. "You're safe now, madam," one said gently. That night, I stayed at Mrs. Anderson's house. She gave me tea and told me not to worry. "You've been through too much," she said softly. "You're a strong woman." But inside, I felt broken. My home was damaged, my peace was gone, and my son's mistake had brought danger to my doorstep. The next day, the police called. They had caught one of the men. He confessed that Michael had borrowed a large sum from them months ago and used fake documents with my name to assure them. When he couldn't pay, they came after me. I was speechless. My own son had dragged me into something even worse than I imagined. Days later, I visited Michael again. He looked surprised to see me. "Mama, what happened?" he asked, seeing the cuts on my arm from the broken glass. I told him everything, the men, the attack, the fear. His face turned pale. "No, Mama, I never thought they'd come after you." I swear I didn't know. I could see the pain and regret in his eyes. He started crying again, holding the bars tightly. "I destroyed everything. I destroyed you." For the first time, I saw true remorse in him. I didn't shout. I just looked at him and said, "Michael, I forgive you. But forgiveness doesn't erase pain. You must live differently when you leave this place." He nodded slowly, his tears dripping to the floor. When I left the prison that day, I felt lighter. I was still hurting, but I realized something important. Sometimes, we love our children so deeply that we forget they can choose their own paths, even the wrong ones. Love doesn't mean blindness. It means setting limits, even when it hurts. Weeks passed, and life slowly began to return to normal. I repaired the broken windows and planted flowers in front of the house to remind myself that beauty could grow from pain. Each morning, I prayed not for wealth, but for peace. And for Michael, I prayed that prison would change him for good. Then, one morning, I received a letter that made me drop to my knees. It was from the prison again, but this time, it wasn't from Michael. It was from the warden. The words made my hands tremble. Something had happened to my son inside those walls. The letter said Michael had been attacked during a fight in the prison yard. He was badly injured but still alive. I rushed to the hospital the moment I read it. When I arrived, I saw him lying weakly on the bed, his face bruised and his arm wrapped in bandages. My eyes filled with tears. "Michael," I whispered. He opened his eyes slowly and tried to smile. "Mama, you came." I held his hand gently. "I'll always come," I said. "You're my child." He blinked back tears. "Mama, I thought I was strong, but I was wrong. Everything I did was foolishness. I thought money would fix everything, but it only destroyed me." I nodded slowly. "It's not too late, son. You can start again when you get out. Promise me you'll live right." He squeezed my hand weakly. "I promise, Mama. I've already joined the prison's church group. I'm helping the new inmates learn carpentry. I just want to make you proud again." His voice cracked as he spoke. For the next few weeks, I visited him every Sunday. We talked about simple things, food, music, and memories. Each time I saw him, he seemed calmer, more humble. The pride that once ruled him was gone. I could see a new man growing inside that broken place. When his release day finally came, I waited outside the prison gate. The moment he walked out, he knelt before me, crying. "Mama, I'm sorry," he said. "I know I can't bring back what I took, but I'll spend the rest of my life making things right." I lifted his head and said, "Then do it, Michael. Start with yourself. Learn to live with honesty." He got a job at a carpenter's workshop and began saving. Every weekend, he came home to help me in the small garden. The neighbors who once mocked us began to greet us again. Slowly, peace returned to our lives. One evening, as the sun was setting, Michael sat beside me on the porch and said, "Mama, I've learned something in all this. When you chase money without conscience, you lose everything, including yourself." I smiled faintly. "That's true, my son. And sometimes, pain is the only teacher that listens when wisdom is ignored." He nodded. "I lost your trust, but I'll earn it back one day." I looked at him, my heart full. "You already have, Michael. You already have." As the breeze blew gently through the garden, I knew that forgiveness had healed what punishment could not. And though scars remained, they reminded me that love, true love, can rise again, even from the ruins of betrayal. Life lesson. No amount of wealth is worth the peace you lose when you betray the people who love you. Trust, once broken, can take years to rebuild, but forgiveness is the seed that makes new life grow where pain once lived. If you were in my place, would you forgive him? Tell me what you'd do in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real-life stories that touch the heart.